Today is April 21st, Tuesday, and we are doing another webinar from the coronavirus. I welcome everyone to the All-in-One Shot. My name is Tim DeJarlais. I'm the Swing Catalyst sales representative, been with the company for about 8 years. I did a webinar about 2 weeks ago, actually 2 weeks ago, about our app and online. Now that everyone's at home and looking for things to do, we're trying to involve our Swing Catalyst customers and try to link them with their customers at home and try to create some business. Through that, internally, we've been speaking about how we can kind of promote our customers, and we sent out some questions to our ambassadors. And it's pretty interesting that we've been getting replies, but Bobby Clampett, who is our guest today, he wrote back to me and he just said, can you call me? One thing I know about Bobby from being a friend of his now and working with him for a few years is Bobby is up early. Bobby Clampett's up early, so I know he's like, call me in the morning. So I call him up in the morning and we talked about the online lessons, and he told me a little bit about his online series, his digital academy, his Clampett Corner. He's really been doing that for a long time, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us to kind of meet with him, speak with him, and to learn some stuff that he's doing online, and not only online and with his digital academy, but also with his system of working with impact zone golf, basically taking the point of impact and going backwards. So what I'd like to do is, before I introduce Bobby Clampett, I'd like to just go through some things about Bobby. Is that well, first of all, it's our first PGA Tour player to be on a webinar with Swing Catalyst. So Bobby is a former PGA Tour player and also winner on the PGA Tour. He's one of our Swing Catalyst ambassadors. He plays the Champions Tour. He is a master professional, golf course architect. Many of you know him as a TV analyst. I think it was with CBS. He's a pilot. He's a writer. He's a winemaker. He's a father of 3. And for those of you that may have seen a post of mine, you should see it's Caitlin, his daughter, did a coronavirus video. Hope you can check it out. It's pretty funny. It's a parody on Dolly Parton. And
Kenny Rogers.
What's that?
And Kenny Rogers.
And Kenny Rogers. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it just dropped my mind there. So, and he's also the CEO and owner of Impact Golf. So I just wanted to welcome Bobby Clampett. He's there in the headquarters in Naples, Florida. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Bobby, just to say a little something. I see you're on the plate. I'm going to flip it over to you. So welcome.
Well, this is groundbreaking, isn't it, Jim and Tom, over at the headquarters of Swing Catalyst in Europe. So welcome, everybody. I'm here in our world headquarters, Impact Zone Golf, Naples, Florida. And actually in the left-hand hitting bay, we have 3 of them here. Alongside our club fitting partners, Club Champion, they have 2 over there as well, so 5 total. But this is my favorite hitting bay because this is the hitting bay that has the 3D motion pressure plate on it. And I've got it actually spooled up. Of course, you probably know I'm from Pebble Beach, and one of my favorite shots in all of golf. In fact, this is Jack Nicklaus's favorite hole in all of golf. It's the 8th hole of Pebble Beach. So I thought we'd have a little fun today, playing the 8th hole of Pebble Beach, making some swings. I'm just going to be hitting some 7-irons, practicing here. See, I got a couple shots already in. But the cool thing about what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to learn so much information about what happens with just one shot. Because as we know, there are no mysteries or enigma to the game anymore. The ball goes exactly where we hit it every time. It's the conditions that we create at impact that sends the ball where it goes every time. So what we're going to do today is actually explore a little deeper as to what causes the ball to go where it went, and help us understand what were the conditions and impact that sent us there, and then dig a little deeper using the 3D motion pressure plate to get into the ground reaction forces and see if we can't find some causative effects of in the ground reaction forces that perhaps changed or altered an impact a little bit. But what I'm finding out with this incredible technology is more and more students are improving faster than ever. And what I'm finding is that when we understand how to use the ground to, well, I use the term the workhorse. So in impact-based teaching, And what I teach is the 5 dynamics: the flat lead wrist, the 4-inch in front swing bottom, loading the club on the backswing, lagging on the downswing, and delivering it down a straight plane line. Those are the 5 dynamics. But how you deliver that lag, dynamic number 4, into the ball is through a process we call the workhorse. And the workhorse is really defined as how we use the ground forces to generate the movement of the lower body, which then triggers the upper body in sequence. And so many people I see getting out of sequence, so many people I see trying to get a forward swing bottom by simply moving the whole axis tilt to the top forward to get the swing bottom out in front, which does sometimes get the swing bottom out in front, but puts everything out of sequence, limits power. Usually see a breakdown in dynamic number 1 there. As we'll see in this Swing Catalyst 3D motion pressure plate, when that axis goes forward first and it's not generated from the ground, it gets out too far ahead of time and then it has to go backwards. And anytime it's going backwards at impact, it can never be good. It could be going torque-wise and circular at impact. I'm fine with that, like what Bryson does. And Bernhard does a really good job of that as well, not quite as much as Bryson. Bryson is so rotational and torque in his sequencing pattern. But as we'll see, as long as it's being generated from the ground, it gets the person into a sequence. So there's no particular style that works here that's like the golden style. So I don't want you to look at what I'm doing and say, oh, well, that's the perfect swing. No, it's not. This is how I do it. This is how I generate. Hopefully today I'll generate some good impacts. And we'll be able to understand if I'm doing good impacts on a regular basis, there'll be some positive forces that's creating that, and we can learn from those. So, Tim, are we going to be able to field some questions during this as well?
Yeah, we definitely will. Now, before you hit a shot, I just want to bring you back a little bit, because I know in your tour playing days, and I actually remember this book here. And for those of you that do not have this, it's the Impact Zone. Cool book to read and to get, and I welcome you. Definitely do get it. But in that book, Bobby, you talk about, you were struggling a little bit with your swing, and you were in North Carolina at the time. And like a lot of players, even like you mentioned Hogan, when he struggled a little bit, he would sit by himself holding a club. And sound like you were in North Carolina at Pinehurst. You were off to the side and just, going through the swing with a 5-iron, you mentioned, hitting some shots, and then you came upon a revelation. Do you want to kind of go into that?
I was struggling with my swing at the time, and I recall the story of Hogan when he was playing poorly. He sat in a bag room way back in a corner where no one would bother him, and he held a club in his hand, and he just sat there for about 3 hours pondering. And I would go through some phases like that where I was always trying to figure things out, realizing that there were answers, and I had to uncover what are the answers, and how do we find them. So I was actually took a club with me. I think it was a 5-iron, and I went out Pine Needles Lodge in Pinehurst there. Bullitt and Peggy Kirkbell were living at the time, and were graciously allowing us to stay there during the Pinehurst tournament, which was a great tournament, by the way, that played at Pinehurst number 2. And I was walking along in the sandy dunes there and hitting some pine cones. I always thought, Ben Doyle taught me long ago that he was my longtime coach. Lee Martin was my first coach. Ben Doyle was a longtime coach for me there at Quail Lodge in Carmel, California. And he was the first authorized instructor of the golfing machine. And Ben, sadly, is not living with us anymore as well. But Ben always taught me that to learn to make a motion, and the ball's just in the way of the motion. And that was the real preliminary of understanding what I term now the ball bound factor, because we do swing differently in front of a ball than without a ball. But I started looking way back then as to, I was hitting a lot of thin and fat shots, and I couldn't quite understand why. And nobody had ever explained to me the concept of low point. I'd never heard of low point. But this was like the first preliminary discovery of low point. And I was hitting some pine cones, and then I always recall Ben Hogan talking about the secrets in the dirt, and I always interpreted that as not that you just have to practice a lot, but there's a lot of information in the divot. We got to understand understand the divot. And so I was hitting a lot of thin shots and not taking a lot of divot. So I decided to draw a line in the sand, and I put the club behind the line in the sand, simply like right here like this, put the club behind the line, which identified where the ball was, and I went ahead and made a swing. And I looked down at the divot, and I noticed that my divot kept starting behind the line. And I thought, the divot, Ben Doyle always taught me, ball divot, ball divot. So you got to compress the club into the ball first, then the ground, and the ball's being struck in the downward motion. So that was like my first aha that something was wrong with my impact. And so I just worked on trying to get my divot to start, not knowing anything about swing bottom, not having developed these theories at all. That was the very first part of understanding that the club needs to contact the ball first, then the divot. So it's always ball divot. And I made some of those changes and ended up finishing fourth that week at Pinehurst. And then the next week I won at the Southern Open. So those are just some examples of understanding how working from impact backwards, which is really the whole philosophy of impact-based teaching, as opposed to working on a swing style that hopefully will deliver good impact results. We look at what are the opportunities in impact that we're trying to improve, and work backwards from there, utilizing some of this great technology like 3D motion.
Right, and that's what happened to you, from what I understand a little bit too, is after 81, 82, or in the mid 80s, is that you were getting a lot of kind of questions or recommendations or certain things about your golf swing, and then it kind of got you away from what you were originally doing.
Yeah, after those tournaments in 82, I kind of started playing poorly at the start of the next season, and was struggling, trying to figure out why again. And I look back on it now, and my path was getting out to dynamic number 5. I was getting too steep with my divots. I started to get my low point out in front, but it was coming out to the swing path. But that's all water under the bridge. Now, I wish I could have been my own instructor back then and had the knowledge that I have now and could have fixed it. But
right.
I got talked into going to see some of the top teachers in the game, and they all approached me and said, we want to change the setup, we want to change your grip, we want to change your backswing positions. Want to change the way you release the club. You got too much lag. You got to get rid of that lag, and et cetera, et cetera. And I went to several of them, and they all had different things to say. But essentially, what they were doing is all changing my style of swing. And I got to such a point where I tried so many things, and now I was in a really bad place, missing cut after cut, that I decided I might as well just go for it and change everything. So I did change everything. The bottom line was. I was 2 years in a row, finished 14th and 17th on the money list, and I never cracked the top 80 ever again, even though I stayed out there for 15 years. So it led to a broadcasting career, and it led to a real passion for trying to understand how that happened, why that happened, and it led to my writing of the Impact Zone, and now just putting out a new book called The Companion Guide to the Impact Zone. Don't buy it quite yet. I'm going to give you a warning because I have been super motivated the last couple weeks with being at home and sheltering in place here in Florida, and have been writing like crazy. And I decided to expand the version that's up there. So you'll actually see the book for sale on Amazon, but I'm going to encourage you not to buy it yet because I'm about to post an updated version 2 that's going to include a lot of what we're talking about today, because just the last couple of days I wrote 11 pages on some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And I've been conversing with Scott Lynn, who is a PhD and is on staff with Swing Catalyst and teaches over at the University of California, Northridge.
The Cal State.
Northridge, yeah. Anyway, so this is just super cool stuff. I love it. Continuing learning. Certainly don't know everything, but I'm continuing to learn, continuing to see how this technology can not only help me. This is amazing. Since I'm on this Champions Tour, I honestly have not played a Champions Tour event in over 5 years, 5.5 years now. So I have been fully retired for a long time. And the U.S. Open was Pebble Beach last year, so my wife said, you know, you really need to try to qualify. You did it back in 2000, you weren't playing, just put your entry in. So I had been playing around on this stuff, and I had noticed that my impact had really started to improve, and I discovered some things about how I was using ground forces or how I could use it better. And I just thought, you know, I played like once a month for 5 years, right? I played many tournaments. And I went in the qualifier. Of course, I only got to play 3 holes of practice on because it was raining and didn't know the course. And I shot a 37 on the front 9. It really wasn't very good. And then I made one little adjustment to improve my fifth dynamic because I was a little out again. And started really hitting the ball well in the back 9, made a few putts, and all of a sudden I shot 31 and qualified. So, and I didn't make it through the regions. Courses were way too long for me. But when I got to California, I actually had a stretch last summer where I was playing about once every 3 weeks and went 23 under par for a 53-hole stretch, including a 64 at Spyglass and a 64 at Third. So some things that, and I haven't still not hit a practice ball since the U.S. Open qualifier last night. And it's just credit to when you use this technology and you use the ground forces right, your margin of error increases so much. And your ball striking will improve immensely. You can use it everything from pitching the ball all the way to the drive.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we can explain a little bit what you have there. So you have the Swing Catalyst 3D motion plate. You have the Foresight quad. It is connected so that when you hit a shot, it triggers the video. The Foresight, as you can see in the background there, it tracks the ball, it gives you all the ball information. On the screen that you might see of the Swing Catalyst, it's capturing the video. All the data is pulled in from the ground forces to the video to the launch monitor data, and it's all saved together. And I think it's, you know, you mentioned that back, you know, in the early 80s, if you had this technology then that you could record your pressure, your forces, the, you know, all the ball information, all that together, because a lot of people think they should get on it when they're playing their worst. But we try to recommend that when you're playing your best, you should get on it then, because then that's a benchmark that if you start to falter, the ball starts to curve in a certain way or something doesn't feel right, you can go back and look if it's, you know, something two-dimensional in the swing, if it's with your pressure, your forces, so you can really dial in on what the problem is.
Well, and the other side of it is, but when you're always, as a tour player, you're always looking to improve. And the only thing that's constant in golf is change. So you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And you always need to be working toward getting better. So even when you are playing well, you should be looking at opportunities to make the certain parts of your game and show improvement better. And so I, you know, if I were back playing the tour or could make a recommendation to tour players today, this kind of technology is groundbreaking. And this is how and why we designed this studio a little over almost 6 years ago now, hard to believe, and started to bring, of course, 3D motion pressure plate wasn't invented 6 years ago, it wasn't around. So we just had balance plates. And then once Tim alerted me to this technology and I got to see it in action, I said I want it. And it has, like I said, it's mind-boggling. And we've got it set up with Foresight simulators. So we got a huge screen here where you can see. I love being able to take students and take them, because there's one thing, there's one element of being able to do it in the practice swing. Then there's an element of being able to do it with the ball in front of you. Then there's another element of being able to do it, hit a shot on the course. And even though you can't physically exactly be on the course here, you can create conditions that are so close to it. It's pretty remarkable. I'll go ahead and hit a shot here. And,
yeah, definitely.
So we got the 8-hole Pebble Beach. You can see it's 7 feet down elevation, kind of on the left side of the fairway there. Play a very aggressive drive, and so we'll just see. 700 is a good shot to hit here. Obviously, the position here is going to be just a hair below the hole, as the screen is so sloped from back to front.
Just took on it, Bobby.
Slightly right of the flag. And it's going to give me, let's see. Well, I'll take you through the whole thing. You want to see the whole thing?
Yeah, you can walk us through it, and I'll try to. What I'm going to try to do for everyone here, I'm going to do my best to try to switch screens a little bit. I'm going to get some feedback on it, so I'm going to try to get the screen here. Hopefully, you can see now some of the data from the launch monitor. Okay, go ahead. So you got 87, or where do you want to start?
I actually got a 13-foot, 8-inch putt left for birdie. So, statistically on the tour, what's that? Probably in the just under 20%. So probably 1 out of 5. I'm going to birdie this about 1 out of 5 times, maybe a little better than that.
Yeah.
Probably 25%, somewhere in there. So, I'm gonna make birdie every 4 times I do this. So it's a pretty good shot. It's 4.2 yards to the right of my target. Let's actually start at the top, and I'll take you down the ball information. The ball was at 114 miles an hour. It launched at 19.4, which is slightly high. And we'll get into this. I was a very low launch guy when I was playing on the Champions Tour full time. My launch angles with a 7-iron were in the low 17s. And what I've been able to do is actually shallow up my angle of attack without moving my swing bottom more rearward. And we'll get into that. That's one of the great secrets of the 3D motion pressure plate. So much higher launch angle, which is my club head speed. You can see at 87. I'm about to turn 60 tomorrow. So my 7th decade of playing golf, hard to believe. But you can see my club head speed is starting to wane down a little bit. When I was on the Champions Tour, it was probably closer to 89. Now I'm getting down around 87. It's all right. I don't play anymore. I don't work out. It's okay. I pushed that ball 0.5 yards right of the flag. That was the start line of it. It looked pretty straight on the monitor, but it was actually 0.5 degrees right of the flag, so almost dead straight. The backspin rate on the 7-iron for me, this is pretty normal, right at 7,000. And this is one argument I have a lot with the club manufacturers today is they're telling everybody hit it farther with your 7-iron. Well, all they're doing is knocking the spin rates down, getting higher ball speeds, higher efficiency, and less spin. So that's what's sending it further, but that doesn't mean control. I love control. I love high spin rates with irons. So I love being able to be in the 7,000 range with the 7-iron. That's control for me. All right, side spin, you can see 208 RPM of right side spin, so it's a slight fade. The ball carried 159. It rolled out 4 yards, 4.2 yards right of the flag, 13.88 inches. All right, so the club head speed, you can see here, 87. That gave a fairly low efficiency when you see today. If I hit it really solidly, I'm going to be right around 135 with these irons, but I'll get into some of the new modern technologies. I've actually got a David Adele 7-iron. I love David's clubs. And yeah, I don't get them as far as some of the modern stuff, but I'm more active with them because of this kind of information. All right, so angled attack, 4.1. I used to be a lot steeper than this. I figured out how to shallow my angled attack without having to lose my leg, which is a wonderful thing. Here's my path, 0-0. That doesn't happen very often. I'm normally a little in and out. So this is a little bit rare for me. I'm normally about 2 degrees in and out. So I'm going to when we get into the swing catalyst, we'll see as to why my path got more out to in than typical for me. Which the face was 0.8 degrees open to path, which is what caused the ball to have ever so slight fade. Loft on the club head was 27.6 degrees. My line angle was almost perfect at 0.8 down. And the contact was 9 millimeters on the toe and absolutely dead flush on the vertical axis. So pretty good hit. Decent shot. But let's
definitely.
Quiet, Tim.
No, it was good. Say we have one question here as you're kind of moving around there.
Okay.
It says, how do you feel about low point moving, or do you feel it doesn't change position?
What does he mean? Between clubs?
Doesn't say. Yeah, I don't know if it's, let's see, about low point moving, or do you feel it doesn't change position? I don't know if it's in regards to, like, I read in your book, you talked about the low point with the professionals being, 3-4 inches ahead of where the ball is. you mentioned that amateurs are more, a few inches behind, and that basically for every inch that you can move, the bottom point basically would, but I think you said would improve 5 strokes to the golf game. Was that
That's
right?
4 strokes per inch.
4
Yeah.
strokes.
So the tour players have a swing bottom that's about 4 inches in front.
Yeah.
We're learning. I think the book was written, was released this time in 2007. So it's 13 years ago. We didn't have all this technology. I've learned so much since then, and that's why I'm writing this companion guide to the Impact Zone and also all our Digital Academy stuff. So I'm trying to do 3 things at one time.
No, trying to help out. So basically, if you can move the impact in general, if you move the impact, closer to the ball or even after the ball, ideally after the ball, you'll play better golf.
Yeah. The low point should be about 4 inches in front of the ball, and of course, Foresight only measures angle of attack, so it doesn't measure low point like TrackMan does. I've been trying to get Foresight to do that, but they don't. And that's the thing about, I love TrackMan, I love Foresight. They each give you things the other doesn't. So that's why we have both of them here.
Yeah.
And
we had another question about how you use the info, or can you give some info as to what you're looking for and how you're using swing callus, and that's what you're setting up right now, because
exactly, jumping the gun.
I know, yeah. They're up on you.
I like it though, at least they're listening, right?
That's right. So I did get a follow-up in regards to the original question on the low point. It's between clubs, like you originally had mentioned, Bobby.
So ideally, the low point shouldn't change, but the angle of attack will. The longer the club, the shallower the angle of attack is going to be. So therefore, low point can stay the same, but angle of attack, if you look at TrackMan's got some great figures from the tour as to what the average angle of attack is on all the shots. And you notice that it's steeper with a wedge, in the 5 degrees with a wedge, and then by the time you're at the 3-wood, it's down to 3 degrees with the 3-wood, and the driver, it's 1.5 degrees or somewhere in there.
Right.
And so everything being down on average. The driver is the one thing where we see the greatest amount of differential, but it's not necessarily so.
Yeah.
So
now you have up the video, and you dialed in the forces I see with the pressure up there.
Yeah. So here we are. Again, we're going to start with impact backwards. In impact-based teaching, this is where the opportunity was. Like I said, my path got a shade out to in, or it didn't get, it was 0-0, which for me is more out to in than I want. I like it being about 2 degrees into out with a 7-iron. Is about perfect for me for the shot I was trying to hit. And you can see my stance isn't open at all. In fact, looking at my stance at address there, it looks pretty straight, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is very straight.
And so I don't see anything really out of whack there in terms of that would have moved my path left with my setup. Everything looks pretty much in line all the way through. Whoops, there we go. I don't know what caused that. Stand by, technical glitches. All right, here we go. So
we got a lot of cameras going on here. So
yeah, we got a lot of technology here, and this, I'm really loving this stuff. We use this stuff in our online lessons with our students, and I've been doing a lot of online lessons lately, and love being able to apply this kind of technology. But we also have instructor certification. One of the things that I'm really, as I enter into the latter part of my career, I'm realizing more and more what I want to do is help teachers teach better. So we already have a level 1 certification, but I want you to know over the next year, I'm going to be working hard on launching additional certifications, which is going to be bringing in this kind of technology, because this is the future of teaching, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely.
If you get into this stuff more and more, people want to see why they do what they do. All right, so I'm already seeing here why my path wasn't so in and out. And it's related right here to this torque factor. This is my all-time high torque. I have never been a 1.39 torque. I am usually right around 1. So if you're not familiar with the 3D motion pressure plate, let me kind of give you a little quick synopsis of what this does. You're probably familiar with the balance plate information. That's the balance. Let me give you a little bigger drawing here.
Perfect. Perfect.
So you can see here, this is measured at address. I've got the toggles for address, top of the backswing, and impact. So we can see that the center pressure here for me, I've got pretty much center pressure when you look at the toe, the red in the toe and the red in the heel on the left side is pretty much center. It looks like I got a shade more toe pressure with my right. That's not a normal thing. Could that cause my path to be a little bit out to in? Probably not at this point, because this is address, right?
Right.
I've got it set on centimeters. That's supposed to be on inches, but I'll do that later. All right. So,
it's an international show, so that's all right.
It's an international show. I meant to do that because Bernhard might be listening. He does everything in centimeters and meters. All right. Even takes his yardages. All right. So as we go in the backswing, you'll see I've moved my line pretty straight line to the top. And maybe just actually, that's the top of my foot pressure backswing. So that's where I reach the maximum on my right side. Now, am I a huge advocate of getting the weight all the way to the right side? No, but I've got a lot of load and lag, and I've also got a lot of horizontal drive in my workhorse. And the combination of the two, if I put less weight on my right side and had that kind of downswing, I'd get so steep. Right. It would be ridiculous. So this is one of the ways I've shallowed out my angle of attack, because it used to be closer to 7 degrees with a 7-iron, and now I'm back more like 4.5 probably on average. This one was what, 4.1, I think. We can go right here to, yeah, there it is, 4.1 attack angle. So we can actually see there's your club path at 0, and the club, yeah, there's all our information. Yeah. All right, so that's the top of my backswing in terms of foot pressure, but you'll notice the club continues to move back. That's part of my way of increasing quantity of lag, dynamic number 4. I actually start down before I complete my backswing, and that's what causes the club. You'll see the shaft actually flatten there a little bit. If I go to a bigger picture here, I'll go back to, so there we are at, I'll go right to the 98. There's the top of the backswing in terms of foot pressure. Now I'm starting the motion down right there. That's the first motion down with the workhorse. And notice the club shaft, how much it flattens. That's always been a trademark of my swing. And it's just been part of my style. When Ben Doyle taught me lag way back when I was 13, that started to happen. I instantly started playing better, hitting it farther. And from 13 to 15, my handicap went from 8 to 0. And then at 15, I won my first national junior tournament, the Big I. So that was a huge part of that, learning lag and how to develop that. He put me in a field and had me hit it in long grass and feel the resistance of the club down at the bottom. So that's one of my attributes. Instructors that have told me I have too much lag and I got to get rid of it, couldn't agree more differently. Yep. But I also need to understand that if you get too steep with it, you've got to be able to do some other things to shallow it out. So we'll talk about that and what I've done. So as I start down, I love retaining lag long time. I'm going to back. Yeah, we're just dealing with the foot pressure here. So we'll talk through the foot pressure. So here it is at 50-50. When the hands are, and the left arm is parallel to the ground, is where my feet are 50-50. Kind of, you know, the old Sam Snead pictures with the squat. I got a little bit of that. Ben always tried to get me to feel that when I was a kid, so it's still in there. And I like it because it's connection to the ground that creates it. And we'll talk more about that. So as I continue, you'll notice the weight continues, the weight pressure, that is, continues to build into the left side. Notice how the left heel is starting to brighten here. If I go to the big screen and show it to you, I'm going to back up a few frames. you'll notice how there's no heel on the ground at this point in the downswing, but now all of a sudden the heel plants and the left heel really brightens. I'm increasing the pressure dramatically into the left heel. I'm a big fan of that because that's how you post. And when you have a strong post, it's like having a strong building to withstand all the ground force reactions that are going and happening through impact. Yep. So as I post, the left heel should brighten and be a little bit brighter than the toe. I like that. And that little curve that you see, this isn't a typical curve for me. It's a little atypical. It's usually a little smoother, maybe because it's just I'm not warmed up, but it is what it is. And so at impact, I'll go back to impact. That's just before impact. 75% of my weight on my left side. And notice the next frame, it jumps to 82 just post impact. And the next one, it jumps to 88. I love to see that in my students because what that shows is there was enough ground force propelling me through impact, so nothing slowed down. Yeah. I'm a big believer that the more you can allow impact to be the result of the swing and not trying to create impact, the better. In other words, you pass through impact. And so you want to be unimpeded passing through impact. And that's a big part of the golf swing and what I teach, because that's what gives you club face consistency and allows the club face then to rotate on an arc. And it also allows you to maintain lag longer. When you maintain lag longer, then you don't have as much face to path variations and you have more directional consistency. So, so 91% of my weight here, it usually increases to close to 100 through the ball, which is what I like to see. And now the ball's long gone, and you know, who cares? You can do an Arnold Palmer, whatever, and make it work.
Sure. So, yeah. One of the questions.
Filled a lot of questions on this webinar, so just want to make sure that any of the background noises you're not picking up, Tim, as I know we got a lot of people on this webinar.
Yeah, no, I think it's good.
Good.
A question did come in about how, talk about how you're using the force or pressure data to influence ball flight. And you kind of got into that a little bit in regards to.
We're just at the balance plate information. We haven't even gotten into the
right.
information. So good question. Clearly going in that direction. So let's get into it right now. Are there any questions related specifically to the balance plate information?
Other than that one at the moment, that's what we have.
Okay. So now let's talk about the ground force reaction and what happens for me in my swing and what can we learn from this in the ground force reaction. So let's go just before the top of the backswing. This is the top of the backswing. I'm going to go back a couple before. All right. So what's happening here is I'm setting up. We know from the balance plate information that the weight is almost entirely on the right side. At this particular point, it's 96% on the right side. And it's going to build to 98. And that's where I have a slight pause in the 98. In fact, I do about 3 frames, I think, where I pause it at 98. The club continues back, but I'm really I'm already starting just as it went to 97. Notice the very bottom. This is your vertical force. Notice this is where the start of the push is actually happening in 2 different directions. So the push off the right foot happens in a horizontal direction and it happens in a vertical direction down. That's what that's what helps me set the lag. I'm going to go back a few more here. So I'm already here, right here, and I'm starting to push and I'm loading into that right leg. I'm really getting into that pushing environment. Now from here, that right knee will actually flex. See that flex right there? And that's pushing off in the horizontal direction. So there are actually 2 forces happening here. There's a downward force into that right foot, and then there's an outward force. So the downward force is actually measured right here in the vertical. We can actually see at this point of the swing, now remember, when the action goes into the ground is pushing away. So that's why it's actually showing less force reaction right here. But it's actually, I'm putting more force into the ground. So 22% more force into the ground at this point. The other thing it's showing is that on the horizontal side, I'm getting at this point 22% horizontal push off of the right foot. But notice I'm going to get to 30% max push. This is an area where the combination of these two is where I found when the downswing gets triggered powerfully from the posting or from the trail leg, that really establishes good sequencing for the downswing. Speaking of sequencing, we can talk about the sequence max timing numbers. So the max 30% on the horizontal occurs 179 milliseconds prior to impact. The next thing that reaches peak was the torque that reached at 1.39, which reached just after that, or 163 milliseconds. And then the last one to reach its peak was the vertical. And I found this vertical very interesting because it didn't have a clear, sharper peak like the torque did. This is actually a little rare for me. Most of them are a little sharper. And this happened a little earlier because the max peak, you can see that little blip right there. The max peak normally is later than that. So my max peak's normally more like minus 70 or minus 60 milliseconds. So this was a bit of an anomaly there, but I believe it's because there was so much torque for me, which I'm excited about that. I've had a hard time in my career clearing. I remember asking Ben Hogan, how do you get that left hip out of the way? Because mine doesn't clear. Well, you can see I'm finally getting it to clear here at 60 years of age. Better late than never, right? But that's why we're understanding why this technology can be so helpful to understand. So the downswing sequence being starting from the sequence of the push off of the trail leg, and the push coming from forces in two different directions, coming from the horizontal and is coming from the vertical. So the combination of the horizontal and the vertical is what creates the torque. And
that's perfect. And then as well, there's a parallel between the horizontal force and the pressure trace as well. You have a very long pressure trace. It gets 98% in your right side, which then would correlate between the horizontal force as well being really high. And that black bar that goes across it, that's actually the PGA Tour average. And you actually get right above that from what I can see. So that's a correlation. As you mentioned, if the pressure trace was shorter than that, the horizontal probably would have been shorter and you would have gotten very steep into it.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, Tim, on that. Because you mentioned the gray bar being the tour average. Do you know what club they're using with that tour average?
I believe that was with driver.
With driver. Okay. So this is a 7-iron. So typically we don't see as much vertical. I normally have as much horizontal with my driver and as much torque with my driver, but I have more vertical with the driver. Yeah. And what I see with good players, they do the same. And again, it's where do you create your speed from? Do you create your speed from increasing arm and hand speed, or do you create your speed from increasing ground reaction forces? And yeah. I believe for consistency and power, the best combination is to always do it from the latter. Those who teach trying to create arm and hand speed independently of the ground, I think are barking up the wrong tree.
Right. Yeah, I did want to mention with the bar, I'm sure Scott would want me to mention, there was, I think, a plus minus one deviation in the black line across there.
Okay.
But overall, I mean, the sequence is really good because at the transition, you should have the horizontal peaking. When the lead arm is parallel to the ground, you have torque. And then when roughly shaft is parallel with the ground, you have the vertical. So you have the right sequence there to be the most efficient.
Yeah. So, and then as you say, when you have that sequencing, that's the most powerful.
The most efficient.
Most efficient. Okay. Yeah. How would you define efficient, Tim?
Oh boy, now you're gonna really throw me out there.
No. I mean, we've had these discussions before, so I love it.
Yeah, I mean, to basically getting, I wouldn't say the most out of your swing, but to be, to be efficient would be to produce power and accuracy upon your ability, and in the most efficient way using your whole body.
Yeah, and it's also in the most balanced way, wouldn't it?
Yes.
where you allow the flow to happen. I would actually define efficiency going back to the concept of making a swing so that impact is unimpeded, so that you're flowing through impact rather than creating impact. We see so many students, don't we? They get to anywhere around impact and everything halts.
Right.
To stop. So because I create such big numbers here, the 30% push off of the horizontal, the big torque, the vertical starting to happen, the steep climb. This is a very steep climb where you can see there's a lot of energy going into the ground that creates this vertical. And that's why this ridge is very steep, as opposed to the torque and the horizontal. See how much shallower they are? This vertical is very steep, and that's because these numbers are pushing this vertical to now happen. And so the vertical happens very quickly because there's so much energy coming from the ground. And as we start down, notice how quickly that vertical climbs all the way to 156 here, reaches a max peak of 159, and that's very early. So typically, and this is where I think this could have affected path a little bit, because typically I would have continued my vertical up higher than this. This is low for me in the vertical and higher for me in the torque. So what happened is the vertical kind of got cut off, and the torque was really more accentuated, which allowed my left hip to clear even more, which got me around even more, which brought my path. If we go back to path, we can actually see right here, the path was 0, and it kept the face open because there was so much torquing there, and not as much vertical. And we're just talking minuscule amounts, right?
Right.
So, we're talking about a degree or two, which when you're working with a tour player, that's all you're really looking at. But,
so I have another question for you that came in.
Good.
It's in regards to the pressure of the plate up there. Would you propose to keep some pressure? Let's see here. In regards to
go back to the pressure balance. Yeah. Okay.
With regards to weight in the backswing in the balance plate, would you propose to keep some pressure in the left toe? This often pulls the left knee towards in the backswing. Is that okay?
Well, you can see clearly I lift my left heel, don't I, in the backswing? Right. Yes. I hardly have. I've got 2% of my weight, and it's 100% of my left foot weight is in my left toe. I have nothing center of the foot backward even touching the ground. So, for me, I get into the real key, and what I try to work on, and where this has really helped my game, which before I got this, I wasn't playing. I don't think I told you this, Tim. I was playing once a month, and my handicap went from like a +5 something when I was on tour to +1.4, I think it was, because I have to keep a handicap for my club. And I'd post all my scores. And when I came across this and started to use the ground to push from the rear leg to start the downswing sequence, I really learned how to do that and put it into my golf swing without doing anything differently, without hitting balls, without practicing on the range, without playing practice rounds, just going out once a month. My handicap went from +1.4 to +4.4.
Wow.
And that's 3 shots. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so, I think we're onto something when it comes to, when you talk about efficiency and you talk about how the ground forces can be used for efficiency. So my thing, getting back to his question, should I think about increasing pressure in the left toe? No, I'm really thinking here, all my thinking is generated in my right side, because I am building and putting myself in a position at the top of my backswing here where I can push as hard as I can downward and outward off of that right foot, off of the entire right foot. So there's no emphasis on the left side at all. My whole emphasis is on how hard can I push. And the more weight I get onto that foot, the harder I can push, or the more pressure. So that's another advantage. And again, you can't take somebody who doesn't have a lot of load and lag and put them in this position. They won't be able to hit it from this backswing position. So you have to understand, that's why the importance, I cannot stress the importance enough for instructors to teach from impact backwards. Don't teach from a style and say, well, this is what, this great player does. He's 98%. Well, Bryson's at 50% there. Okay. So, and he's got a very different styled swing. And he has very little load, and he internally rotates on his backswing. Even though he's got great quality of lag, he purposely takes out the quantity of lag and puts the club on a vertical plane to get more club face stability and consistency. Yep. And you can't argue with his success. So, but he lost 30 yards when he changed his swing. He's got 2 golf swings. I love working with Bryson and talking to him. Mike Shy, his longtime coach, and I have been good friends, and Bryson's dad, John, and I went through junior golf together. So Bryson comes in here and works every now and then on this stuff, and he loves it. He eats it up.
That's great. So, you with being a TV analyst and being out, I know that you covered Tiger a lot, and I mean, you have seen so many players and played with a lot of the greats. And who were you most maybe impressed with, or as far as their ball striking ability? Or
I've heard rumors that Tiger has this exact equipment in his house. And
yes.
Look at what his swing in late 2018, which is the time that he would have gotten the equipment. And before he won the Tour Championship, the last event of the year, which then led to his winning the Masters. When you look at how his swing started to look through that process, it looked effortless.
Yeah.
And when you talk about efficiency, Tim, in the workhorse, when you look at the ground force reactions as efficient, what does it do? It creates a visual of flow, ease, but yet power, like effortless power. I'll just play this for you here in regular slow-mo. And you can see this doesn't look like it's a super powerful swing, right? Of course it is. I'm too old for that now.
No.
But you can see there's a flow to it, especially when going through the ball, that there's nothing impeding impact. The club's not visibly slowing down. The body's not slowing down. Everything's moving through impact. And I think it's the real key. Even Bryson in his rotational workhorse that he has, very rotary, his impact is unimpeded.
Yeah.
It's just a very different pattern.
Sure. And in looking at your swing, I mean, this was a good shot. It was close to the pin, a lot of the force, everything that's good. You even created more torque. We had a question of what is your typical miss and how do you correct it using the force or the pressure plate?
Well, I hate missing the ball left. Absolutely hate it. Can't stand it. Just about every tour player feels the same way. So I believe most missed shots should go a little right. And gear effect, most mishits will cause the ball to go to the right. So I don't mind missing the ball a little bit to the right. When I start missing it far right, typically it's there's not enough push to start my downswing. Watch these numbers start to drop right here, like 30% will start dropping down to 25. And this down pressure probably won't be as much, because if I'm not getting off my right side, then typically what I'll see at impact, let's see, what was I at impact here at 78% of my weight at impact on my left side. So when I'm not that far on my left side, typically, and it's starting to hang back, that leaves the face open, and I start hitting it right. Now, if I get any of my left shots, which I can't stand, are all related to not loading at the top, and the lag gets thrown out early. So which causes the flipping at the bottom for me. But the thing about a good workhorse, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to create lag, but it supports lag. And that's a real critical principle, I think, that when you look at how you can use this technology, and everybody talks about lag. Yeah, I want more lag. Well, do you want more quantity of lag, more quality of lag? Quality lag is way more important than quantity. Quantity is going to give you a little more distance, but quality lag is what's really key. And you see that with all the tour players, don't you? I mean, you look at Steve Stricker, David Toms. They don't have much quantity of lag, but they got great quality of lag. Yeah. So, but when you have a good workhorse, delivering that lag through impact, that lag's not going to get thrown out very easily, and that's going to do nothing but bring in your dispersion patterns and make you a better ball striker.
Right. So one last question here, and then we'll start to wrap it up for the day. Do you have a specific drill or swing thought that you use for teaching that guides your students to produce better sequencing, timing, without making it complicated for them?
Well, that's a great question. So what I will do most of the time with a student is I will see if can they do this without a golf ball, right? I'll get rid of the golf ball and see can I make them. I'll put them on our turf line out in front here and do some drills with them visually. I do a waist high release drill. I'll use a medicine ball drill. I got all kinds of drills I can use them. And I watch individually. This is where you can really see and tap into the athleticism of an individual. If a person's played any sports, they usually tap into this pretty quickly, even at an older age. I had a gentleman the other day came in. He was +1 handicap, 62 years of age, and good player, competitive player, and he was averaging 75 miles an hour club head speed with a 7-iron, which isn't very much. Not that I'm that long, but 87's okay. But 75 for a +1 handicap was really low, and he was complaining about his mid-irons not flighting, not enough spin, etc. So put him on this, and you know what his max back off of his right foot was?
No.
He was at 14%.
Really?
His max down was at 9%. He had great load, great lag, great hands, and wasn't using his ground at all. And I started to get these numbers up into the 20s. And his club head speed went from 75 with a 7-iron to 83. 8 miles an hour club head speed. This is already a +1 handicap.
Wow.
This is in the first lesson. So he immediately joined me for a year and in my annual coaching plan. And, that's just, I can tell you so many stories like this, and it's just true.
Have to save it for another webinar.
Yeah.
So Bob, if you could hop up on the plate there, because we can't see in the screen, just so everyone can see you there.
Yep.
Maybe just we can wrap up since a lot of people are at home and drinking some wine. So this is the Clampett Cellars. You have to go out there and get that. And I heard the rumor that are you gonna be selling it in stores soon?
They actually just went in a couple days ago in the first 17 stores out in California, the Pebble Beach, Monterey area. Safeway has them. So that's our new product there. We have the Clampett Cellars Napa Cab. We have the Impact Zone Blend. Wonder where you get that name from, right? And then also the Chardonnay. And pretty excited about it. It's 3, but we've got about 10 different wines. Tim, you love wine too, so we always enjoy having you come to the house and share a glass of wine with us. Sure.
I appreciate it. And then when you get to the facility right there, you have a little bar set up so you can even have a glass while you're there. Couldn't be better. And then do you have a new place now as well you're opening up?
Yeah, thank you. We just opened up at the Club at Renaissance in Fort Myers, simply about 8 minutes from the airport at Fort Myers, and about a 30-minute drive north from here. Great setup. We got an indoor building. We got the swing catalyst set up, the track being in Foresight base up there. And nice thing about up there, it opens up onto the range so you get actual true ball flight. But we also have an 18-hole short game course up there, a wedge range, and they're redoing a Arthur Hills golf course, and it's going to be fantastic when it reopens in the fall.
That sounds great. So yeah, everyone watching, definitely check out the Bobby Clampett's website. I mean, buy his book here, not yet, later on Amazon. Buy some wine. Next Thursday, we're going to post here shortly.
The second edition of the Impact Zone Game Guide will be ready on Monday.
There you go. And then in 2 days, Thursday, Dr. Scott Lynn will be with Sean Foley at 1 o'clock. Do note 1 o'clock, not 12:30, 1 o'clock. It's the human movement and ground reaction forces. It's going to be really interesting to listen to Sean Foley. As you know, he's worked with Tiger Woods, Justin Rose, some others. So it's going to be really great. Hope you can join it. Bobby, thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Hey, you know, you got me out of the house to hit a few shots. So that was also 13 feet, 11 inches from the hole. So popping it down to 13 feet.
All right. You're doing great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you very soon. Stay safe out there. Thank you.